Hello and good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our New Jersey statewide Family Engagement Hub presentation, our Lunch and Learn. This is the second in our financial planning series being done by Mass Mutual, from piggy banks to college funds. Lunch and Learn, and this is financial goal setting. So, my name is Kim Rivers. I am the training coordinator for our New Jersey Family Engagement Hub. And thank you for joining us today. I encourage everyone to please put your name into the chat. Let us know where you are joining us from. And certainly, I'm going to pass it over to the team for introductions. So this is our family engagement team. And we've got Faith, Kayari, and Alexis. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Kim. Good morning, everyone.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Welcome.
So now let's talk a little bit about our Family Engagement Hub. Our Family Engagement Hub is all about making sure that there is partnership and collaboration between educators, families, community, and students. And this is based on the research that students thrive when families and communities are engaged. And that engagement increases the likelihood of student success. So we do a lot throughout the state with districts, and we do these workshops, we do webinars, we have partners that come on and do different offerings. Please, I encourage you to go onto the Eventbrite and follow us, and that way you get notifications of the upcoming offerings that are taking place. And without further ado, I'd like to pass this over to Mass Mutual. Thank you.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. We appreciate you coming on. And I know we have two faces here today. I'll be leading. My name's Tina Zappi. I'm a financial advisor with Mass Mutual, and I also run our We Care team, and we're out of Warren, New Jersey. This is always everyone's favorite slide. This is just a disclaimer. Again, this is going to be general advice, and I think to Kim's point of what this organization is all about, it's more so to change mindsets and create curiosity when it comes to topics related to financial literacy, and today is all about goal setting. So again, general, not specific. It'll change situation to situation, but just to give each and all of you a different way to start thinking about these things when it comes to financial goals. You can go to the next. Thank you. You'll see this slide at the beginning of all of our presentations throughout the series. What is financial well-being? This is what our team, our firm is looking to do throughout society through workshops like these with NJFE and other organizations throughout the state. The overall goal is financial well-being, and what does that mean? So first, as rudimentary as it sounds, control on your day-to-day or month-to-month finances, knowing what's coming in and out, and knowing how to deploy whatever the surplus may be, or on the other side, how to take care of debt and all those things. Two, being able to absorb financial shock. I think any of us in the past couple of years can say economy life has been very volatile. So how do we set up, at least on the personal finance side, ourselves to be able to withstand that volatility? Three, and today will be a big part of this, being on track to meet financial goals. Well, how are you even on track if you don't have them set? So this will talk about how you can go about some of those general goals. Four, having the financial freedom to make the choices that allow one to enjoy life. I always say I meet people that want to retire and don't, but everyone wants the ability at the end of the day to be able to create their own income, create their own freedom, and down the line, if they want to, have the ability to choose to stop needing an income to fund everyday life. If you could go to the next. All right, so for today, first we're going to start with goal setting overview. What does it even mean? And then throughout this, Mass Mutual has done a study along with others that found what are the four main concerns that we've seen throughout society, and we are going to discuss some high level options, I'd call it, for goals to set within each of these categories. All right. So first and foremost, a lot of us might have multiple goals. Some of them might be getting out of debt, home ownership, retirement, college education, supporting parents and family, and I think the most fun one, dream vacation. Nonetheless, when we look at goal setting, it's not necessarily realistic to think that you're going to have all six and you want to achieve them all at the same time, or one's not more important than the other. Things are going to be prioritized, whether it's natural or if it's something that you do intentional to get ahead of the game. So we always say, yeah, the dream vacation might be great, but say we're trying to get out some form of debt, whether it be student loans or credit card debt, that might be a priority on top of the dream vacation, knowing the consequences of one versus the other. So it's great to have multiple goals, but slide is really showing and saying it's important to have them prioritized. Which one are you going to focus on? Therefore, you know what effort to put into each one as we go. So when we look at goals, how we want to set them up, a great way to think about them is we call them SMART goals. And there's always acronyms for everything. But I think this one is plain and simple and a really great way to create actionable goals. So first, specific. What does that mean? When we're talking about financial goals, that means a specific dollar amount. That means, call it paying down $50,000 on a student loan, paying down $5,000 on a credit card balance. That means saving $1 million for retirement. However these numbers make you feel, it's more so what is that exact dollar amount to achieve this goal. 2, measurable. To that point, you need to have a specific dollar amount to be able to measure against it. So not only are you measuring against the end game, but as you make a plan, so I'll take the first example I gave, having a goal to pay down, call it $50,000 of student loans. The measurable aspect, it's in two facets. One, say we're looking at it from a year-to-year basis. You want a measurable timestamp or measurable checkpoint, call it, to look at, am I making progress against this goal? Maybe I want to pay down, you could call it $12,000 a year towards this, meaning every month I know I can measure against my progress because I know I owe, quote unquote, $1,000 to that goal. So it's really important because when we want to track our progress, to make sure the checkpoints are measurable as well. Actionable, what this means is it's something that, again, it's kind of rudimentary that I can take action on, but more so from when you look at your financial landscape, is it something I can take on? What does that mean? So when I looked at what is financial wellness in the first slide that I went over, it was having track of your day-to-day or month-to-month expenses. What actionable means is how can you go from what you have coming in and out, taking that and putting it towards this goal. So it's knowing that it's something that you can take action on now and having a clear plan on how you're going to do so. It could be looking at your salary, seeing that you're saving $2,000 a month, and then back to my first example, putting $1,000 of that towards your student debt. Again, these are really high-level examples, but I think the methodology that this uses for some of you to start creating these goals or maybe thinking about your goals differently is really important. Then the fourth one is relevant. What does this mean? I think this goes back to prioritization of what do you want to focus on in the short, mid, or long term, and what is most important. Those can be two different things, but usually fall in the same place of, when we look at debt, usually that's something that we want to prioritize because of the negative consequences if we don't chip at it. So for that, the student loan could be the most relevant goal that we want to focus on, because if we do, it'll alleviate a lot of the pressure that we have on our overall financial landscape. So this can mean different things to different people. I'm just kind of sticking with this example to show how each of these categories fit to the goal. But you'll see, and I'll reference it at the end of this presentation, if you go into the folder and we have different flyers that show you how to create some of these SMART goals, you're going to want to fill out details when it comes to each of these categories. Lastly, time bound. It relates to measurable, I'd say, but you want to have a clear time period on what it is that you're doing. Without this, you don't add urgency to the goals that you're looking to achieve. One, and again, you can't track your progress. Say I want to pay off that loan, I give it no timeline. Does that mean I want to pay it before, my last day here? Because that wouldn't necessarily be enjoyable. Or do I want to get it done in 5 years, 10 years? Because maybe I want to buy a house in that time period. It doesn't matter, and again, this is going to change from goal to goal, but the most important thing is you want to have a timeline for your checkpoints. So as I mentioned, every year, say I'm going to pay X amount against this goal, and then an overall timeline for when do I actually want to achieve this overall goal. So goals, as you could see in the slides that I went through before, they can either be related to wants or concerns. Wants. I mean, I'm sure all of us are daydreaming about a vacation right now, coming off the long weekend with all the snow and cold weather. As much as that doesn't mean you shouldn't have a goal towards it, because a lot of the times, if we have a vacation or a big purchase coming up on the horizon, we want to set a goal to track our progress and make sure we're making measurable contributions to whatever savings is going to go towards that. Other wants can be home ownership. I know this is something I'm working on, a new car, or as simple as a birthday gift for someone. It doesn't have to be a certain amount to make it a goal. It's just really important to start this methodology as you're saving towards the wants. And then obviously, you set goals on the concern side too. As much as concern has a negative connotation to it, I think when you really go through this goal process and you start to create actionable items to start chipping away at these quote unquote concerns, makes it seem a lot more manageable. For example, paying bills goes back to, again, that month-to-month control that I discussed. And why I say that is when we have a goal set, so to pay the bills, when you have a set amount that you know is equal to your monthly bills, and you have a set goal and you're tracking your actions towards it to see that you're pulling out X amount of your paycheck to pay those, that feeling of being overwhelmed or not being in control of your day-to-day or month-to-month expenses, it starts to be alleviated. And that's the whole point of these goals. No matter whether it's on the positive or quote-unquote negative side, if you take on this process when you're looking at them, it's going to feel a lot more manageable. So as I mentioned and I alluded to, MassMutual did a study, and 4 of the main things people seem to be creating financial goals over fall into these categories: income, savings, retirement, and debt. I'm not saying everything has to fall into these, but it seems like this is what we're constantly thinking about on a day-to-day. Some of the goals and that we're going to review as we go through this presentation are going to be very high level, and I don't want any of you to think that these are the ones that you have to take on. For example, when we hop into income, it's going to talk about how growing your income year to year on a small percentage can have a huge impact on your financial well-being. Well, that's not always an option, or it doesn't always seem like the most feasible. And I understand that. And we're going to go through each 4 of the categories. It doesn't mean that you have to achieve these broad percentages or goals that I'm going to go over today for it to be worthwhile. You could, if you, in the income, you'll see I have 5%, even 1% has a huge impact. And this will make a lot more sense as we go. But I just want to make sure when we're thinking about these, we understand these are common concerns that we all have. I can't tell you how many times I think all of the meetings I've had up until this point in my job have been around one of these 4 categories. And a lot of people forget how common it is, and they don't want to necessarily talk about it or create goals or, take the Sunday instead of watching a TV show for an hour to really create a plan around them, because they are overwhelming and they create that sense of I'm not in control of my day to day. And so even if it's smaller goals than I go over, it's going to be worth it. And on top of the financial clarity, you're going to feel a lot of mental clarity as well. All right. So again, these are very high level. What I want everyone to take from today is the mindset around the goals rather than these numbers needing to be your goals. But first, in income, we're going to talk about 5% a year. Again, that doesn't necessarily have to be the increase that you shoot for. There's a lot of things riding on this one. Promotions, if you're taking care of a family, obviously it's easier said than done to go get a second job and all these things. So I do want to not be ignorant to that standpoint. But again, I think you'll see how the math shows that a small percentage over a long amount of time, you'll see how your lifetime earnings, which a lot of people don't think about, they usually think about what I make per hour, what I make per year. When you think about lifetime and how small increases really impact that, it's very encouraging, to be honest. Two, we'll look at, and people have broad goals, I'd say, not to overuse the word, of what you should save annually. Some people say 20% of your gross income, which is pre-tax. Some people say 10% of your net income, which is after tax. And a lot of the time, especially even when I'm working with people, we don't start at hitting 10%. The whole point is that we're looking to see, what am I able to save now, if anything? And then year by year, trying to stay, we always say, small enough for long enough, maintaining your expenses, maintaining what's pulling out of those paychecks, and increasing that percentage of savings year over year. The third one, retirement. People don't really know where to shoot. People don't know what they need to do. So this is very high level. This number is going to look very different for each person depending on what their living expenses are. But I think it's a unique, just take 15 for me for the next 40 minutes that we have here as a way to start thinking about retirement. Because I think it's a goal that people don't even want to think about, or they don't have a plan around, because it seems so unattainable, one, or it's so far away. But when you start putting numbers behind it, things become, again, a lot more manageable. And the last one here, again, it's not going to be feasible for all, but I think it's important, going back to the slide 2 slides ago, paying debt in 20 years. Doesn't have to be 20 years. A lot of us, like myself, if I hopefully purchase a house in the next year, have a 30-year mortgage. The timeline doesn't really matter, but what I do say is it's important to have that timeline, to stick to it, and to look at how that's going to impact the rest of your financial landscape in future. So again, as we go through these next couple of slides, I don't want these numbers to say, oh, I can't achieve these goals, or I shouldn't even think about them, or I'm just struggling, to break even. The whole point is to gauge a starting point, a measurable goal, starting point, and build from there. All right, so again, we'll start with income. 5% is just a really general number that Mass Mutual came up from their studies, but I'll focus more on what a small percentage increase looks like rather than this 5%, knowing that it depends on, a bunch of things, occupation, time management, all that stuff. I think this is a great slide, and one that I'd encourage people after this meeting, go into online, whatever resource you want to use, look at what your lifetime earnings is projected out to. I don't think people think about this a lot. And it's not necessarily bad that people don't. Again, this is my day-to-day job. I'm in this every single day, while you all are doing a lot different and even more rewarding work than it is that we do. But we all specialize in different areas. And I find it's interesting when I get someone, not a lot of people are able to spend that much time on looking at this, how it really opens their eyes. Because let's just take a $75,000 salary or wherever you land. And I think this slide does a better job, 2% increase. We usually see anywhere between 1 to 3 increase when it comes to cost of living adjustment increases for salaries. But nonetheless, I think it shows how much money with even a small increase, 2%, can lead to by, call it 37 years. So it's not even accounting your working timeline. When you're out in the workforce, whether it's from high school at 18 or college at 22, or you graduate anywhere in between, it's waiting until 30. And then looking at, if you start at 75 at the age of 30, 75,000 as a salary at the age of 30, and you project that out, lifetime earnings, so you're earning that for 37 years with the 2% increase, you're going to bring in around or over $4 million, which is a number that a lot of people that I meet with, whether they're making 75,000 or 10 times that, $4 million is like the staggering number that's hard to look around. But I think it's important to see there's a lot of potential throughout our lifetime, even if we're not achieving staggering income increases, even if we're just following what lifetime adjustments look like, or even if you want to go online and do this for yourself, assuming no promotions, no increases ever at your salary, you'll be surprised when you project it out to any estimated retirement age how much you're really going to earn. And I think it's important to look at income and take the goal side out of it. It's important to look at what income and how much you're really going to earn that you can use for some of these other goals that we're going to look at moving forward. All right. And I know this kind of takes it, and I like how they started at the 2% because I think it's a little more realistic. Like anywhere between 5 or 10, I'd say from where I sit as an advisor is usually a promotion, a raise, whatever it may be. But I think, again, you see 1% and it doesn't feel like a big change. You see with compounding interest in all these things, how much just these small increases make a difference. So I'm happy we start with income because it's usually the one that maybe we can't control as much, but I think it is important to show that you can have these, I don't want to call them slight, but maybe more common income increases related to goals that we see in society, and it still will make a substantial difference on what you're going to earn throughout your lifetime. All right. And some of these, again, I know they're not obtainable. I'm not going to be this person that makes it seem like all these goals are easy. And I think the point is we're not trying to make them seem easy. We're just trying to show that there's a will and a way to go from A to B. But with these 4 things, again, I don't want to harp too much time on them, but these are some ways to get there. To me, it's more so the income is something you can push where you can. And I think the next section, the goals, will be a little more applicable. Tax exposure is something we always look at. That can be if you have an LLC or some sort of business formation, which I see people do on the side a lot, structuring that correctly, or even with your own taxes, withholding the correct amount. That can vary from family to family drastically, and there's some methodologies around having that as accurate as possible can help with your cash flow. Sharing economy, again, it's easier said than done, and I'm going to reiterate that a lot when it comes to the income goals. But what this goes to is society has seen a shift where there's been a lot of, I'd say, occupation opportunities when it comes to different services, whether it be, like we've all seen DoorDash, Uber, all these things. And again, we're not saying it's easy. It could be like opening up a storefront. But I think the overall point of this slide is there's some small things that even if you're not bringing in that much, as we just saw in the previous slides, it could make a substantial difference. Again, over time, I think it goes back to what I just said, easier said than done, not something we can all do. Passions into cash, again, it's all around. I think this touches more on the side things. I like to say, even if a second job is ideally, I think, not something a lot of people want to take on, especially with other parts of life going on. The past couple of slides show how important it is, even from just small increases in your current occupation, how much it really can impact your starter goals, your income goals, where you can use that to achieve all your other goals down the line. All right, savings. This one, I get asked this whether I'm at dinner with a friend or I'm doing a workshop like this. How much should I be saving? It's a question we all have. And I think, again, this number is a good place to shoot. But even if we're not there, I'll kind of reiterate as we go through the slides some things you can do just to set goals on your own situation as well. All right, so setting saving goals. There's a couple of different buckets when people start to save where they start to put this money. Everyone or a lot of people have heard of emergency fund. Where do I go if I need cash quick? Whether that be my tire popped or, cars are always fun, especially in the winter, but whatever may come up. How do I make sure a set amount of expenses are covered? 2, home ownership. I know I just talked about it and a lot of people do. Whether good or wrong or the market going crazy, it's something that people commonly want to achieve at some point. And that can also look at not just for yourself, but secondary if you want to rent or don't necessarily want to take that on for yourself. 3, college. This is a kind of foreshadowing into our next workshop of the series. But more so, how do you want to, whether it be for yourself or setting up your children or whoever it may be, to start preparing to fund that college expense that's coming at some point, if any. And then vacation. I think it's funny because people, you tense up, tense up, and then you see the picture of the beach. But we're going to treat all of these the same. I think that's what people forget. And a lot of these, the tense starts to stop when you start having a plan behind them. All right, we're going to stay consistent from the income slide, but again, you can take this math and bring it to wherever you are at currently from an employment standpoint. So I always say a big misconception, or not even misconception, but something that people don't necessarily take into consideration when they're doing their own financial planning is pre-tax to post-tax. What do I make? $75,000 salary. What does that mean post-tax? All different states, that's going to mean different. So this 469 number, you don't need to harp on it too much because everyone's tax brackets are different. But I like that. Yes, we all are. But again, I think it's important to look at your paychecks versus what you are quote unquote employed for, or what was on your contract, and see what is that difference. One. Two, you'll see 5% here. So, and this is a really rough estimate, 5% of after-tax savings is going to be around that number. So I think it's important to say, you need to know where you're at now. None of these goals are really achievable, and you're not going to be able to measure against them, as I mentioned in the SMART slide, if you don't know what you have to put towards anything. I urge, and I have a couple budget forms that I put in the folders or I can send to whoever, where a lot of people don't even know what's going on month to month. I'm a financial advisor and people laugh. I do it once every quarter to myself to see what's coming in, what's coming out, what money do I have in surplus. And then I'm very strict with how I set some of these goals, savings and all that. After that, I'm not looking at it on a day to day. We are so busy, all of us, doing work, family, life, and all of that. The savings goal isn't something you should need to worry about on a day-to-day basis. It should be something that you go in, you see where you're at currently, say we're saving 5%, and our goal is 7 for the next year. People forget, they try not to make the 2% progress because they don't think it's enough. Meanwhile, if they did 2, they're going to be ahead of the 5 that they thought was unimaginably, or they weren't able to achieve per se. So I always say, get a sense of where you're at currently saving. Look at what percentage that is to your pre or post tax, however you want to do it. I'm saving $500. What percent of that a month is that to my income? And then look at what you have coming in and out and see what is that next step that I can take from an increase perspective, and then you can hold yourself accountable once you have a target. So there's always two sides of the coin, and I think I alluded to it when it came to income. When you're looking at savings, it seems rudimentary. You can either make a little more money or you can save a little more money, aka spend a little less money. And that seems simple, but I think people don't necessarily see that they have a little more control of this than they think. Again, income, I don't want to act ignorant. I know that can be up for debate, I'd say, to a lot of different factors of employment. But expenses, I can't tell you how many people come in when they meet with us and they're nervous and tense. They don't know what's going on. And it's almost kind of like coming to a confession when it's something you haven't looked at in a while. And then they go through their own expense sheet and they see how much there might have been that was controllable, or they didn't even know how much they were spending in a different category. I can't emphasize it enough. It's not that people have to meet with us or not to do it. It takes, I always say, 15, 20 minutes to really open your eyes to a lot of things. So yeah, obviously there's two sides of the coin where you can start to make adjustments to your saving goals. But I think a great goal to start with following this workshop for yourself, just see where you're currently at, see what percentage you're currently saving, go through that in and out exercise, and then you can kind of come back to this slide. What makes sense? Is there somewhere from an expense standpoint that I can hold back? Or let me see maybe over the next year if I get a cost of living adjustment or whatever it may be, where I can maybe save versus put into my lifestyle. So again, some of these things may seem basic from a strategy standpoint, but I see so many people, and it's not necessarily that these concepts are complex. Again, they're in the day-to-day. They're living 24 hours at a time. they don't have time to do a quick audit of their current landscape to see if they're utilizing these things. So a budget, and I'm going to sound like that nagging parent or whatever it may be. If you're watching a TV show, take the same amount of time or even do it during it. Run a quick budget this weekend. Just see where you're at. I know it can be overwhelming, but to do any of these goals, to start putting away any money, you got to know what you have coming in and out. This is my favorite one, automatic savings. It's one that I think is super overlooked and that I use as a professional. I treat my savings as an expense. So when I get paid every other Friday, on that Friday, I already have set that my bank account or my investment accounts are going to pull out from my checkings X amount of dollars. So it's almost like an expense. It's almost like when I get paid, I wake up and I don't have that full paycheck there. But what does that do? It builds in that savings amount. It doesn't even give you an opportunity to spend it. Now, obviously, we're putting these things in bank accounts or even investment accounts that we have the ability to pull the money out if we need it. That's why we build emergency funds and all these things I'm talking about. But I think the more you can automate your finances, again, even myself, doing workshops like these, working long days, I'm not looking at my finances every day. So the more I'm delegating it myself, and I'm in it every day, doing it for other people. So I think, again, this point is something really to look into. You can go online, find instructions. Start with $5 a day, $50 a paycheck, $10 a paycheck. Again, these goals can be adjustable to your situation. I just think it's really important to decrease the amount of friction that goes into achieving these goals. And this is a really simple one to do it. 3. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Lowering costs through new technologies. This is easier said than done. Again, I think you just have to go through your budget, see what you're spending on to lower your expenses in general. I wouldn't focus on the category, but there are certain things that you'll see when you go through your monthly budget where you can say, okay, maybe I can pull back here, etc. And lastly, one of the things that I see people miss on a lot too, higher yields. Some people think, what is a higher yield? It's earning higher interest on your money. That's aka sitting in a bank account, investing account, etc. Making more money off the money you have. Some people think this has to be an elaborate scheme to do so. There are things like high yield savings accounts where you'll earn 3% instead of 1%. And all it takes is 20 minutes of research and transferring that money over. And I don't want to oversimplify these things, and I'm happy to answer any questions on what option might be best for you, because I know that can change from person to person. But there are very, very basic or simple low-risk options to earn higher interest on the money that you have in your savings, etc. And I really encourage high-yield savings or even looking at your bank statements. You should have contacts that you can reach out to. I don't have to be that source of truth. I just encourage, the whole point of these workshops is encouraging curiosity. The TV thing is what I've been seeing a lot, Kim. That's funny. All right, retirement. I know 15, this can seem like, what do you mean? How can I even do this? And I'm never going to retire. I get all these different responses thrown at me when we talk about these goals. I think where we want to get when we talk about what number should you set for retirement is kind of like the last slide, to get people to even start thinking about it. Again, we're living 24 hours at a time. Wrenches can get thrown into life and you won't have time to focus on it. But I think it's important to find time when you do to start thinking about, like, what does that exit plan look like? Because the earlier you start thinking about it, the easier it is to get there. So whether it's 15, I think it's just important that everyone on this call starts to think about, what does that mean for me? Like, if I make, call it $50,000, what does 15 times that look for me? And start thinking about these numbers that might seem, too large to grow to. But when you start making small steps with a long period of time, 10, 20, 30 years to get there, again, it's going to seem a lot more manageable. You could go to the next. Thank you. So nest egg, what does that mean? Again, 15, it can change from person to person. There's things like Social Security where people always joke, I don't know if it'll be there or not. And all these different streams of income when we're retired. But long story short, what this slide is saying is a nest egg of 15 times your annual income could generate around 75% of your pre-retirement income during retirement. What the heck does that mean? So how that can look is, let's take the $50,000 example. You multiply it by 15, call that your quote unquote nest egg. So when you take that 50 times that $50,000 and you get your nest egg, and we're going to look at 5% here, there's certain income percentage ratios that we look at for how much money can I pull out of my nest egg per year when I'm retired, with the hopes of not running out of money. Now, I'm trying to keep it high level, given this is a goal setting of let's shoot for a number to be comfortable at retirement. This looks different for a lot of different people. This looks different for everyone, given that inflation is considered into this. Maybe you're dual income, maybe you're not. Maybe your living expenses are going to change drastically down the line. Maybe you'll downsize. Maybe I'll go with Laura to Florida, wherever we're going, and buy a secondary home. But long story short, I think it's really important to, one, think about your income in a multiple when you're thinking about retirement and where you really need to go. Because I think a lot of people have not even thought about if they're on track or not. And it's only becoming longer for us, which is great. That means technology and everything is increasing from a life expectancy standpoint. But two, like, there's so many calculators and things online where you can do this at your own leisure. And I know it might not be leisure. We'd rather watch a TV show than doing that. But I think it's important to have an idea of where do I need to shoot for, so you can work backwards using this smart methodology and start creating goals for yourself. Some other things to think about, and I know this is really high level, so this topic is probably going to create more curiosity than give clarity to how to exactly do it for yourself. I'm happy to answer any specific questions, because I know this can become a little overwhelming, like looking at a bigger mountain than you want to climb. But nonetheless, some things to start thinking about as you're looking at retirement is, I know, like, at some employers we have access to 401ks or 403bs, different retirement accounts. What contributions do I need to put in there to see what that'll grow to? Fun fact, if you log into your retirement portals, a lot of them, when you play around with what you will contribute, will show you, based off of estimated growth, what you could retire with based off of that contribution. Again, something simple, and I know I always try to throw in some small things that you can do on your own there to at least get an idea of where you could grow if you started on that retirement goal. Some other things is estimating retirement living expenses. This can be something like bigger to chew that we help a lot of people with, but when I talk to people on how to do it their own, you want to think about things like your mortgage, maybe a vacation, any way that you need to support any of your dependents, etc. And what does that number look like? Because at the end of the day, when we're retired, sometimes that number can change. Maybe we're doing less. I know for me, I'm hoping golf and a beach are in my future. But in reality, as much as some of those may seem as luxuries, the cost of them, depending on how you do it, isn't necessarily overwhelming when you take out the cost of all the other things that you were maybe doing during your working years. Like, I know for my mom, if you met her, she looks opposite of me. Blonde, skinny woman, can control a room like no other. She was a big suit woman with her jobs and everything. She just retired in the last year, and she was astonished on the money that you save. And I don't want to even call it from like a leisure clothing purchase standpoint, saving on working attire or traveling to events or just the gas in your car and all those, eating out more than she used to, or eating out more than she does now because she's home. So I'm not saying you got to find this exact nitty-gritty number, and I think that'll deter people from taking action. But I think it's important, I'm 26, I look at my retirement income every day, probably because my job, I'm not suggesting that. But whether you're in your 20s or your 50s, 60s, wherever you land, it's important to start thinking about this stuff. The earlier you start setting goals, the easier it is to make progress. And the last one, this is one where I find a lot of people, when we look at the 4 concerns, this is definitely one where people, it causes a lot of worry, I'd say. It causes a lot more of that emotional reaction. And I know mortgage is one where that's a good liability. This could be student debt. This could be credit card debt. This could be a HELOC on your home. There's all these different situations that people are in. And I find, as an advisor, This is where I meet people, and it's never too late, but in urgency, where it's something that people don't want to look at their debt as a goal because it's something that is just so overwhelming and eats in, whether it's mental capacity or whatever it may be. And it's something that people don't want to look at and figure out a plan. They just go by whether it's a minimum payment or just paying what they can, which is a great start. I'm not taking credit where it's due of just doing that. But they don't want to look at if there's any options or strategies around it or what timeline will I actually pay it in, because it causes such an emotional reaction, rightfully so. So this is the last one I'd say, really important. If you're in any of it, is if it's a good liability or bad, I know there can be an emotional reaction to it. If it's something you're lost on, I strongly encourage get online, or I'll mention at the end how we can paint some context around it. No matter what you do, utilize this goal methodology to take control of some of these situations rather than letting them eat at you. So how do we do so? And I did not put the golf icons in here. I don't know how they found their way. But setting a debt payment goal. And I think taking control of your debt is what I want to drive home here. A huge one that I get when I meet a lot of people is, how do I balance debt with other goals? So if I have a mortgage or I have a student loan, but people on Instagram or the news are telling me to start saving, what do I start with? I find almost everyone I meet with has that same question or concern in a different form, because it's, how do you prioritize it? So it's looking at what you have on the liability side, looking at what you have from an asset side, and figuring out what's growing most efficiently or the fastest, and how to deploy your income efficiently to achieve your goals. Second, how to be debt-free in retirement. Retirement's already a feat in itself to fund your expenses. I see so many people, they go into it, say, with college debt that they tried to help their child with, and they forgot to put their oxygen mask on before themselves. And people are coming out of retirement to pay for some of those things. It's nothing wrong with doing anything that you can for your children, and that's just one example. But it's really important to try to limit that liability side, because that means you'll need less income going into retirement. Save more. Some people will chuckle on that. If only if it was easy. I think when I see save more, as much as I laugh myself, it's not that it's just easy to save a couple $100 more. That's not what we're trying to reiterate in this presentation. I think it's more so when you go through some of those budget exercises that I showed, even if it's a 1% increase year over year, you saw what that can do, 2%, 3%, to your overall lifetime earnings. So I don't think it's just save more from an ignorance of it's easy to do so. I think it's important to measure where you're at currently and then look to see what can you actually start to save more on a year-to-year basis. This is one, and I want to drill this home. If there is one thing if this is resonating with you on the debt side, if there's one thing you do when you log off today, know your debt. I can't tell you how many times I meet with people, and it's okay. It's never something I want people to feel guilty about, that they don't know what their debt is, what type of loan they have, what the interest rate is on it, what the payment is, what the term is. And that is to no fault of anyone. Again, we're living 24 hours at a time. If you have any form of debt that you don't know, I strongly, strongly encourage, if you have 5 minutes today, to download that statement and know it in and out. That is step one, ground zero, and I can't tell you how much clarity you'll get from knowing what it is. This will go back to our first series our first workshop in the series, No Good Debt versus Bad. It's not all bad. I think people hear debt and again, we tense up. Debt can be good. I mean, mortgage, we're homeowners. Student debt is always seemingly negative when you hear it in the news. That's an investment in yourself or your child for a better future. Debt doesn't have to be something negative that we think about, as long as we have a plan and control over paying it back. And I think that's where people, they get into it without having a plan on how they're going to get out of it. And then 3, setting priorities. This is something that we do so much with people from where do I start? Like, a lot of people are paying minimums on whether, and again, mortgages are different, but they're paying their mortgage minimum on the credit card, call it balance, and then they're putting, say, $200 to their savings. The numbers don't really matter. They don't know if that's right. Like if I have $500 per month, where should I be putting it? So it's important to do research. How is all this growing, and where should I really put my money towards for it to be the most efficient towards these goals that I'm making? And again, I think this is reiterating what I said before. People don't know where to start. I strongly suggest, even though this is my job, there is information out there. If you need to see what the interest rates are, download your statements, figure out what that rate is. Start to download your bank statements or wherever you have your savings. See what that's earning. Start to make judgments on, what is growing faster? What should I tackle first? Rule of thumb, and it'll depend on what your monthly surplus is, if you have one from an income standpoint, you want to tackle or put money in whatever is growing the fastest. And that can depend and change depending on what you have going on. Again, if you have questions, I'll show you how I can give you some insight depending on what you have going on. But there are plenty of action items you can take yourself that I'm pointing to give you clarity based on this chart on where the heck to start. So lastly, again, when you walk away from here, I don't want you to come from, Tina told me I need to increase my income 5%, get 15% of my income to retire, or 15 times my income to retire. These numbers are just to change your mindset. I find that we live in a society where people think it's all or nothing. How many times, when you go to a nice dinner, you order a salad, and then you either order a salad, you don't get dessert, or you go all out on the dinner and you get dessert and you go crazy. It's funny, I relate a lot of this finance stuff to dieting because it's very similar. It's delayed gratification, one. Two, people have a really strong all or nothing mentality when it comes to these topics. And I think that's why a lot of people don't take action to set these goals. So if you're not even able to save any money, let's look at what that deficit looks like month to month, what's causing it, and how maybe we can get rid of some of these liabilities to free up that cash. It's all about creating measurable goals. So if you take anything, and it's not that you got to set 4 goals in all these categories and have everything figured out. I'd love to see just one goal that you might, and you don't have to say like the money amount or whatever, one goal that you're going to think about a little bit more following this workshop, and sit down, and it doesn't have to be using the flyers that I have, or it doesn't have to be talking through it with us, of I'm going to think about what that goal is, how I can achieve it, and track it for, say, X amount of time. There's so many apps and things you can do so, but if you take anything, as I said, know your debt, check on what your savings is doing, and just try to find one goal that you can start working on to change your methodology of I'm not in control of this to I know what's going on and I'm making small baby steps to it. It becomes a lot more fun just with one. But yeah, that's what I hope all of you take from here. And again, yeah, I know these numbers, they're very drastic. Again, more so the methodology than the numbers. But if you have any questions on what these numbers mean or why the generalizations were used, feel free to reach out. We can look at how they fit into your current situation and see what makes more sense from a relevance standpoint. All right, and I know my buddies Chris is here. He couldn't make it. So with any of our workshops and everything, I know, especially this one, a lot of curiosity is created. This is something our team, our firm offers as a complimentary consultation. What the heck does that mean? There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of specifics. I know one of the situations I mentioned where maybe you're balancing debt and savings, and it hasn't been something that you quote unquote felt comfortable to ask, but it's something you've kind of been itching to get answers on. That's what this consultation is for. Again, it's something we offer to all the attendees of our workshops. 30 minutes, we have no agenda. You come in, you tell us what questions you have and everything, and we start to figure out how we can help you create a plan or start getting answers and some clarity to what you have going on. But I think that was it for me. I really appreciate you all hopping on. I know when people hear finance, it's not the most fun, especially during your lunch break or whatever it may be. But the whole goal of this, and I think why it relates so much to this organization that we're partnering with, is we really just want to create resources as much as a level playing field and change mindsets around different topics that haven't always gotten the exposure that they need.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Christina. That was just wonderful. I think a lot of us can relate to all of those tips regarding saving and how stressful it is to face the information regarding your debt. And I certainly am going to put a lot of those in place and kind of rethink and change my mindset about how I look at my retirement and family and expenses. So we're super grateful that you joined us today. Grateful to participants who have. And yes, we are not done. So this was just part 2 of this financial planning series. The next one is going to be next week on Tuesday, March 3rd. I think, what is that, 2 weeks? That one is going to be on college planning. And then the one after that is going to be on March the 17th. And that one is going to be for special needs trusts. So please make sure that you have registered for those. And we thank you so very much for joining us today for our New Jersey Family Engagement Hub Lunch and Learn. Please, before you leave, make sure that you do our survey. So you can take your phone and click on the QR and give us a survey. That way we can continue to offer you all of this and all of the other offerings we have. And if you go onto our njfehub.org website, this and every other offering that we have done is available on that website for your viewing pleasure. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, and we will see you at our next offering. Have a great day.